Next on CEO Exchange, Jack Welch, former chairman and CEO of General Electric.
We've been growing 20 billion plus a year. That's bigger than Coke.
Welch calls it like he sees it and shoots straight from the hip.
Business is a game. It's not some serious, pompous-ass thing.
Next, CEO Exchange goes one-on-one with Jack Welch, a man at the top of his game. They're called innovators, big thinkers, the leaders, the ones who push when others pull. Some transform industry, others change society. Many inspire a new generation. CEOs, chief executive officers, facing challenges, achieving success, telling their stories. CEO Exchange. And now our host, CNN senior analyst, Jeff Greenfield.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to CEO Exchange. I'm Stuart Varney. This is the second time that CEO Exchange has come to the University of Michigan Business School, and it's truly great to be here. My guest tonight is the most respected chief executive of the 20th century, Jack Welch, former chairman of General Electric and former CEO of GE. Jack Welch has been called both one of the toughest bosses in America and one of the most supportive as well. He climbed to the top of the complex corporate structure, and he got there by breaking just about every rule there is to break. From the day he took the reins, and that, by the way, was April Fool's Day in 1981, Mr. Welch went to work, fixing a company no one knew was broken. Back then, GE's net income was up 9% on revenues of nearly $2 billion. So what was wrong with that? According to Welch, just about everything was wrong with that. In 1981, GE did 1/5 of the business that it does today. And then it did it with 30% more people back then. I know you future MBAs like numbers, so here are a few more of them for you. Then, market value was $12 billion. It is $399 billion today. And lest we forget, $1 billion is $1,000 million. The stock price has skyrocketed more than 5,000% in the same period, returning to investors on average 25% a year. So, you may well ask, how did he do it? Tonight, we'll be speaking to Jack Welch about his years at General Electric, his view of leadership, and the personal side of the man who not only remade his company, but transformed himself from one of the most reviled CEOs of the 1980s to one of the most admired business leaders today.
The case for change in General Electric is absolutely clear.
Jack Welch was a surprise choice for the top job at GE, but from the second he took the reins in 1981, the place has never been the same.
It's very hard to tinker with success, but Jack didn't just tinker with it. I mean, he went in there and broke the place.
Welch took a company that was already a powerhouse and made it leaner, stronger, and more diversified. Cutting the fat came first. Welch trimmed about 170,000 jobs, more than 40% of the workforce, earning him the nickname he dislikes, Neutron Jack. Then he ranked employees annually, with the bottom 10% getting pink slips.
We grade people on the bottom 10, middle 70, and top 20. And we do it every single year. We do it rigorously. Now, people can move from the middle 70 to the top 20, from the top 20 down to the middle 70.
To make the company stronger, Welch insisted that every GE business had to be first or second in its market, or be fixed or sold.
Now, every one of those positions is a leader: aircraft, engine, power, medical, etc.
During Welch's tenure, GE acquired 934 companies.
Think how much wider, how much more engaging, how much more fun it is to work in this big laboratory.
Today, GE offers an astonishing array of products and services, from aircraft engines, power generators, and locomotives to medical equipment and household appliances to financial services to NBC, an unusual addition that made sense to Welch.
High cash flow, growth, great people, pizzazz for GE. Why would you not be in it?
Well, we would have liked to have bought NBC in that period, but we didn't want to buy the whole. The whole was RCA, but he was bigger and he was able to absorb the whole thing and had a better vision than I did.
Welch's vision led to 4 major initiatives during his tenure. One was the Six Sigma program to improve quality.
That defines our job, finding a better way every day. Sounds like a slogan, but it's the way we work.
Next came globalization, with more than 40% of revenues now coming from abroad. Then he grew services like finance and insurance to 70% of GE's revenues today.
We've been growing 20 billion plus a year. That's bigger than Coke. We've been adding one of those a year for the last 4 years.
Most recently, with digitization, every GE division grew its own web enterprise, earning Jack a new moniker, eJack.
I'd like to get some fresh thinking from you.
Welch had a passion for training future leaders at GE's Crotonville Leadership Center, where Welch's dislike of bureaucracy led him to encourage any company employee to contribute new ideas.
Jack has really developed 400 hitters, and that's a talent I don't have.
At General Electric, Welch raised eyebrows by encouraging staff to cut bureaucracy, face reality, and live their dreams. But his innovations helped GE become the world's most admired company, and Welch the world's most admired CEO. His secret?
Great leadership skills, down to earth, feisty, lots of energy, a lot of edge, a lot of humility, yet a lot of pride.
Even with friends, Welch is a no-nonsense negotiator.
At times, you get burned. You wear your asbestos suit when you're seeing Jack, but you always know it is done because he believes so passionately in where he's going.
And where he came from was straight out of graduate school, to GE's plastics division in 1960. Welch almost quit a year after, when he got the same raise as everyone else, but stayed when GE promised him more freedom. Welch moved quickly up the corporate ladder before winning an Olympian struggle to become CEO in 1981.
We're going to grow double digit this year. We're going to go double digit next year.
In 2000, Welch launched a year-long effort to acquire another industrial giant, Honeywell, but the deal fell through when European antitrust regulators failed to approve it.
I consider it the right thing to do in the beginning, to take a swing at it, to fight like hell for it, and to walk was the right call.
When Welch retired in September 2001, General Electric was the world's most valuable company in terms of market capitalization. But his record speaks of common sense, not just dollars and cents.
Every one of us reached further, faster than we ever thought we could. And we loved hanging around with each other. And this corner grocery store of $130+ billion became a family business that thousands participated.
Ladies and gentlemen, the former chairman and CEO of General Electric, Mr. Jack Welch.
Don't be exhausted.
20 years at the top at General Electric. Let's talk about those years. GE has in fact been around for well over 100 years. You've been through 2 world wars, several recessions, 1 depression, crises of every kind, and you still come out on top. What is it that's unique about GE that you're on top and there's nobody else in sight?
Well, I think that if there's one characteristic of GE, it's been a focus on people. And more on people than on a specific business. And I think if you really realize that your core competency is developing human spirit and getting the best of people, you can survive most anything.
You started out at GE in 1981, 20 years since then. There was a recession in 81, there was a recession in 91. Some would say we're entering certainly a slowdown period or a recession right now. That's what, 3 or 4 years out of 20 years when we've had a contracting economy. The rest of the time, it was a growth economy, and some of the best years of growth we've ever seen in our lifetimes. I put it to you, I'm not going to say you were lucky in your timing.
Oh, I
at being
would.
at the top. Well, let me put it nicely and say you were fortunate in your timing at being at the top.
There's no question. There's no question at all. If you think you're going to get an argument with me over that. No, but I think you got to look at who were our competitors in those days. How many here have heard of Westinghouse? When I first became chairman, one of the requirements of the chairman at every board meeting was to show the quarterly results of GE compared to Westinghouse. So I rest my case.
When you took over, you were known as a rebel. You were known as someone who had an anti-established theory mentality. You hated bureaucracy.
I hope I still do.
And everybody knew it. Did Reginald Jones pick you as his successor because he knew you were going to change things and he knew things had to be changed?
I'd give him credit for that.
So you came into this and everybody knew you were going to change things around, standing on its head.
Well, I think he knew I was going to change things. I'm not sure he knew how much.
Did he approve?
Yes, to the day.
Did you start the changes immediately? First week on the job, first month, first year?
Pretty quickly, Stuart. Pretty quickly. And, look, change is awful. When the Wall Street Journal went from 2 sections to 3, most of us had trauma. Change is a very difficult thing. It has very little constituency. Change is something that people do not relish easily. And yet change is at the heart of what makes business vital. And so getting an organization to absolutely relish it, to want it, to see it as an opportunity, to see it to jump on things. I was watching a television show this morning, CNBC, I might add.
Of course.
And a man was on from the Vail ski resorts. And in this terrible time and period that we're all suffering through, he talked about some moves his company was making. This morning, he just bought some rock resort properties. He bought several hotels at prices he never dreamt he could buy them at, because the world thinks no one's going to travel again. That person made a bet. Somebody else who sold them made a bet that people won't travel again. He made a bet people will travel again. We'll have to see how it all develops. No one knows for sure, but change made that opportunity possible.
You've clearly got a responsibility to your shareholders. You've clearly got a responsibility to your customers. You have a responsibility to make a profit, to gain market share, to be a robust, dynamic, growing business. Do you have social responsibility? Is Jack Welch's heart in making GE a socially responsible organization?
That's a motherhood question, first of all. Now let's go at what social responsibility really means, because it means different things to different people. I'll tell you what it means to me. Social responsibility means win. Become a winning company. Only a winning, socially responsible company, a winning company, highly profitable, can be socially responsible, because its people aren't worried about their jobs. They're excited, they're energized, they give back. Why? Because they have time, they can focus, they can give back. If you're in a company where you're hanging on for your last nail, and you're not sure about your job in the morning, you don't give back. When people are doing well, when people are winning, they give back. They have time to give, they have money to give. Bleeding hearts are not socially responsible. They don't have anything. So having a winning company is what your job is.
Nobody knows CEOs like other world-class CEOs. And we've lined up some questions from those world-class CEOs to ask directly to you. And the first question comes from a man who has called you, by the way, the Tiger Woods of management. That gentleman is Warren Buffett, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Berkshire Hathaway, and here's the question that he's asking you.
Jack, if when you taken over General Electric 20 years ago, it had been owned by your family, so it was going to be run as a private company for the next 20 years. How would you have done things differently if you hadn't been in the public arena but had been reportable only to members of your family as to how the company was doing?
I can't think, honestly, Stuart, of any time that I've done anything that I did because we're a public company versus a family company. I did everything with everything I had in my body. I did it with all the integrity I thought I had. I never cut a corner. I never did a thing that I thought was out of line. I did it the best I knew how.
A private company, you could have done some things quietly. A public company, you've got all kinds of reporting duties.
I was never concerned about that.
No?
Nope.
Never want to keep things not quiet, but private.
Give me an example.
Strategy of some sort. Your acquisition strategy. Of course, you didn't lay that out as a public company, but you made it clear what your strategy was.
But I made clear in my annual reports every year, I wrote the annual report not to share owners, but to employees. I even dedicated to employees and share owners. Our largest share owners were our employees. So, look, you can tell everybody anything. It's in the doing it that counts. I mean, speeches don't mean much.
How about a quick, may I ask for a one-word response before we close out this discussion on just a couple of subjects. What do you think is the true function of a CEO?
Lead.
What is the most important quality, one word to describe, that a CEO brings to the table?
Passion.
What's the single biggest, most frequent mistake that CEOs make?
Only one word?
No, you could... Take your time, Jack. Take your time.
I think it's not recognizing that they're probably the last person to know what's going on.
Do you really think that? Do you really think that the CEO is the last person to know what's going on?
In most cases.
Would you say that was true of yourself in the last 20 years?
In most cases. And one of the things that's absolutely critical, and we'll talk about it either now or later, is the CEO better appoint, if a CEO wants to drive a company in a direction and announces an initiative or anything like that, who he or she appoints to the job will tell everything about how serious they are about the effort. Because everyone in the organization can evaluate everyone in the organization. They know who the winners are and who they're not. And a CEO most often says, this is where we're going, and we're going to put Joe in charge. And Joe's got about 3 months to go to retirement, or Joe's been almost canned twice. And that all of a sudden kills the whole initiative.
Let's move on to Jack now, sir, who first met you before he was named the CEO of the Ford Motor Company. And here's his question.
Jack, after 40 years in the business, you've gone through some big winners and some big losers. And a lot of people probably would ask you to talk about failures and what you didn't do. What I'd like to do is ask you about your biggest success. What is it?
Without question, building in General Electric a meritocracy where it's all about unleashing people. The modern corporation where everyone counts, where people come to work every day knowing we care about their idea regardless of the stripes, where people are evaluated in a candid way, right between the eyes, where they stand, no phony appraisals. Because the cruelest thing you can do in life is that game where you appraise people over the course of their career. And then they get to be 55 and somebody calls them in and says, so long, we don't need you anymore. You're not very good. And they bring in 30 years of appraisals that say they're just fine. So don't any of you think you're being kind managers, that you're being good people because you give nice appraisals. That's the cruelest thing you can do to a human being, is not let them know where they stand, what they need to do to improve, and if they can't improve, ask them to move on as early as possible. If business schools talk more about appraisals and how to do it and had courses on that, we'd be a lot better off. If human management became the major rather than quantitative calculations of strategy and this other nonsense became the issue, we'd be a hell of a lot better off, because your job is to build the best team. The reason why Michigan beats Illinois, damn it, every year, is they field a better team.
Okay. On that note, we're going to go to our audience. We have two professors in our audience today from the University of Michigan School of Business. Noel Tichy is director of the Global Leadership Program, and also he ran GE's Crotonville Leadership Center for 3 years. Professor, your question, please.
Hi, Jack.
I know.
I had the opportunity in the last 2 weeks to interview the 3 contenders for your job. Jim McNerney at 3M, Bob Nardelli at Home Depot, and last Friday, Jeff Immelt. And I asked them candidly about the succession process. And 2 of them gave you Fs on the decision. 1 gave you an A. But in a world where a lot of blue chip companies have failed at having a successor, IBM had to go outside, Merck had to go outside, 3M, Home Depot, HP, you succeeded. What lessons are there for other CEOs and aspiring leaders for how to develop that leadership pipeline for succession?
Well, I think, as you know, Noel, you were part of starting it with us. You live it. I mean, we saw our job. One of the things that helps us in GE versus a single product company is you couldn't possibly know how to do a Seinfeld show, build a jet engine, do a CAT scanner, and build something else. So we don't have a problem knowing less about a particular business. Our skill has to be, can we pick the right people? So every day in GE, they say, is an appraisal. We appraise people in the hallway. We appraise them. Every day we're testing people in new environments. And so it becomes an obsession. People are obsession. I think my batting average has gone from, in the early days, 30 to 40% to something like 75 to 80% I'd give myself today. Still the hardest job in the world to be right all the time, and you're surprised all the time. I think, though, we started this process 6 years before, and we worked hard on it, and it was the most important decision of my life and the board's life in GE, and we took it that way, and we had some great candidates.
Thank you, Noel. Now we have a question from Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn is the M.E. Tracy Professor of Organizational Behavior and Human Resource Management. Bob.
Thank you. We could have an audience full of executives here listening to Jack Welch explain success and talk about those things like cutting the bottom 10% and all those tough policies at GE. And that could be a recipe for disaster. That is, if that's all they hear, and they don't have that commitment, that passion, that caring, that support, they'll go off, do those policies, and be a disaster.
I do believe that one of the mistakes made in this 20-70-10 thing you talked about, Professor, most companies in downsizing, for example, in this times we're in now, will spend so much time with the HR people and the CEO on worrying about the 10% that go. The most important thing for leadership in a time like this is to be fair to those people, to be sure it's not a surprise to them because I've had candid appraisals, but more importantly, go hug the top people in the company. Go tell them you need them for the next game. A star is worth 5 to 10 average players. It's no different in business. than it is on the football field down the street here. It's no different. And you've got to be sure that you take care of your stars all the time, in good times and in difficult times.
Professor Quinn was really all about leadership, and that's what we want to talk about it more. At Crotonville, that's your executive training center.
Right.
And people there that I've talked to say that you come on often like a professor, that you would have made a very good professor at a good school. All right, can you give me a 30-second lesson in leadership?
I think that, first I'll talk about the qualities. I see in leadership 4 E's wrapped in a P. Energy. I look for energy in people. In a world that's moving as fast as this, you've got to have incredible energy. Secondly, I always look for people who could energize others, the second E. Because if you're a whirling dervish and you're not exciting others to your dream and opening them up to do things, your energy isn't worth anything. Third was edge. The person who could say yes or no and not maybe. Or not that damn manager who says, let's recycle that another time. Come back in a month. That's not what you want. You want yes or no. You don't have time for it. And then E, execute. Get it done. Deliver on what you say. And wrap that all in a big P. Passion. Care more than the next person.
Can leadership be acquired by anyone, or is it inherent in just a few people?
No, I think it's both. I think that there's some gene that gives people some degree of self-confidence, but I think it's all about life experiences. I think coming to the University of Michigan and getting an MBA is another notch of self-confidence. Some people get it their mother's knee. Some people get it by being valedictorian. Some people get it by being the best athlete. But it's always building a notch. I mean, for me, with a speech impediment, 40 years ago or 35 years ago, I had to give a speech and it was written. And God, I got sick before I went on the stage. Now I can go in front of 10,000 people and stammer all over the place and feel very comfortable doing it.
How do you give people back their self-confidence once they've lost it? You as a leader, can you restore it?
It's very hard. I think it's one of the hardest things in the world. You try, but when people get in that vortex, you've seen it, that awful vortex of losing self-confidence, I almost always believe they're better off going to a new environment and starting again. But my experience is, if you lose it among a peer group, it's one of the worst things you see in business.
As a leader, how do you motivate? Is fear a part of your armory?
No.
Rewards of money, perhaps?
Rewards include in the soul, with better jobs, job content, in the wallet, with more money, with more options, with more. But mainly what you want to do as a leader is you want to give people a chance to take a swing. Your job is to let them take a swing so they can build the confidence. You'll never build a great team if you always give them the incremental assignment. You want them to stretch and try to do something that they didn't think they could do. And then when they do it, they've got a whole different level of self-confidence.
My friends at NBC and CNBC tell me that you reach often right down the totem pole. You don't just talk to the top brass at those organizations. You come right down to individual anchors and producers and chastise them sometimes on their ratings on occasions. Is that part of your style, to reach right down the totem pole as far as possible?
Well, I would say encourage them to do better rather than chastise them on their ratings.
Let's move on to another CEO question. Boeing, as you obviously know, is the world's #1 aerospace company. It's a very big customer for GE jet engines and its division there. This next question comes from Boeing's chairman and chief executive, Phil Condit. And here's the question.
I will be very careful with this answer.
Jack, we built the Boeing Leadership Center with a lot of Crotonville mixed into it. It has been a tremendous, powerful thing for Boeing. Why is it you think that a lot of other companies haven't modeled and used the Crotonville example?
That was a lot easier than I thought it might be. You know, I don't know why. I think going forward, I think if you're going to have change in a company, the only way to have change is to have an educational center. The only way to do it is to relentlessly communicate the need for change, the rationale for change. And you have to do it over, through, and around the organization.